So is it running?
Yeah.
I think we're live. We need confirmation from Mom.
Go.
Go. Good old Mom.
All right, we're
Not
going
her
to-
strength, by the way, the AV side of
We're
things.
going to continue and talk to Dad, dear old Dad, because he's got a lot of great history about his family, so he's going to delve back into some family stuff for the camera.
Just two general areas having to do with my family. Number one is the basic history of the family and what we might call the family tree. We have information that goes way back. Thanks to an old maid aunt who lived in the 1920s, spent her whole life chronicling this family tree information, and ended up with a book about this thick having to do with the Seaman family. And just in a nutshell, my family tree on my mother's side goes back to her parents only, and they're Irish, mixed Irish and English, and we can go back to the mid-1800s. My mother's maiden name was Stewart, and that's as far as they go. But on my father's side,
Were they from the old country, or were they?
my mother's parents had come over from the old country, came over from England, but I believe that the father, Stuart, I believe Stuart is English, and the maiden name, which escapes me, is
Dutton?
Irish.
Is it
No.
Okay.
So that's my mother's side. But on my father's side, we go back to the earliest date that I have record of is 1042. There's a person named Seaman in 1042 over in England. They're all from England. There was a famous book called the Doomsday Book that the new King of England initiated in 1086, wanted a list of everybody that lived in the country. And there's a Seaman in there that's an ancestor. It's about 35 generations ago. We have a Seaman over in England. At a certain point, the Seaman family, they came over to the United States, America, and the Mayflower was 1620. Captain John Seaman came over in 1632. And at that point, the motivation for coming here, even for the Mayflower, was the motivation for coming here was strictly religious. The people on the Mayflower were Puritans. As far as I know, all the Seaman family, starting in 1632, were Quakers. They landed up in Massachusetts Bay, and they traveled down through Connecticut and ended up on Long Island. They were, all those years, were leaders of the Quaker movement in the new country here, and basically out of Long Island. There's also a connection back in the mid-1800s. A brother-sister named Seaman married, and they both intermarried with a brother-sister named Cromwell, and our relation, and going back on that Cromwell side, we can go back to, he was a king of England. He really wasn't a king, but he was Oliver Cromwell that took over England for those couple of years. So the Seaman family, we get records that go back 1,000 years. Now then, the only other connection that I'd like to just touch on briefly is what we call the Hood connection, which is half Uncle Dave. So it turned out my mother, before she met my father, was a career woman, and she ended up going to a private party and was a victim of rape back in the 1920s. And she had a baby girl in the late 20s that she put out for adoption with the nuns in Cleveland. And my mother was one of 9 siblings. Only the oldest brother, Uncle Hugh, was the only one that knew about this. My mother went to Cleveland, had the baby, gave it up for adoption. 40 years later, one of the daughters of this half-sister of mine tracked me down, and we got a call in the 80s, and there were my sister had since passed away, my half-sister, but she had 6 children as part of that, and we have become very close with that whole family starting in the 1980s. And their basic...
So let's go through like some of the names of those 6. There's Linda, right? And there's...
well, they were, their family, their name was Chambers. And the 3 oldest were girls. It was Twyla, Linda, and Mary. And then the 3 youngest were boys, William and David. By the way, David was named after me when he was born. He was the youngest, and my half-sister died in that childbirth, but she had named that person David after me, and I didn't know about.
But she knew about you.
She knew about me, but I didn't know about her until the 1980s. So we see them regularly now, and our closest, the oldest girl was named Twyla, and she's married to a good pal of ours, Bill Ginn, and they live in California. We see
and I don't think you
regularly.
mentioned your half-sister's name is Twyla too, right?
No.
Alicia.
Oh, Alicia.
Her name was Alicia.
Sorry.
So that was a surprise, but a great surprise. I remember the day that was all uncovered in the 80s.
So that makes us all, we have all half cousins, and
Half
it's
everything.
very complex to figure out every time we get together.
Right, but that's just a little addition to the family tree that happened to us in the 1980s.
So, well, thank you for covering those other points, and I think we'll wrap this up.